Cool. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, August 22nd meeting of the Basalt Town Council. A few items before we get underway. In the public access portion of the meeting, if you're here physically, of course, you can just come up and address council. If you would like to address council virtually, remotely, you can connect by going to www.basalt.net, and under the Agendas and Minutes tab, click on August 22, 23, open the meeting packet. On the meeting access instructions page, click on the link to join the webinar. Public comments are timed and limited to 3 minutes, but anyway, that's a way you can actually, if you're watching, that's how you could connect with council. So with that, Pam, I'd ask that we call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Angela Anderson.
Present.
Yay.
Glenn Drummond.
Here.
David Knight.
Here.
Elise Huddle.
Present.
Ryan Slack is not here yet. Oh, he's usually here. Bill Kane
Here.
and Dieter Schindler.
Here.
Okay, most of the A team is present.
Great. First up is the consent agenda. We have 2 items. The first in minutes from August 8, 2023. And we have a special event activity permit for yoga in the park. So these are 2.
I'd like to pull the yoga in the park off of the agenda for a second.
Okay.
I have no particular issue with this event, but in light of our beautiful river park and comments I saw on Facebook regarding the art-based gala last weekend, I think we should reconsider our rental policy. I looked at Aspen's and I looked at Carbondale's, and I just think that the demand for our new park is going to be a lot higher than it was for Lions, and I think it's worth taking a look at.
And do you, did you happen to remember from Aspen or from Carbondale if nonprofits had a different status versus a for-profit, or? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Well, I have the Aspen open, so they have an application fee, a recurring park rental fee, a special event permit fee, a base rate fee, so they have a whole structure in place for that. So I imagine there probably is a difference between nonprofit and for-profit. But just in general, I think we're gonna see a lot more requests for rentals here. And so in order to make sure that we're being fair to the community, I think that we should reconsider like what that looks like and that structure and under what terms we rent and those kind of things.
Okay. Yeah, we can work on that.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Call to the public. Anyone want to address council on an item that is not on the agenda for action later tonight? Nobody calling in. Okay, thank you. So next item are mayor and council reports, comments. Anyone? I'm going to say the same thing I said last week, but it's all true. The Wednesday concert, great. And the market Sunday was fantastic. I mean, people really like the park space, and we are kind of hedging our bets here. We're kind of half on the park, half up here on the paved surface, but you know, for produce and for heavy loads and lifting and food service and everything, it makes sense to be close to the paved surface. So I think it works fine. So anyway, it was great, and I think people liked it on Sunday. So congrats to our organizers.
I wanted to say that I don't know who's responsible for the colored sidewalk over by the middle school, but I love it.
I was going to mention that, but I'll let you know that BPAC did that. So they wanted to do something that was kind of fun for going back to school, but they were hoping to do a little bit more between Post and BPAC on improving that area And so that's something that we'll work on
Yeah.
next year with more permanent improvements. But they thought, hey, let's see if we can do something fun.
It was fun, and it makes me smile every time I come through that intersection.
I agree.
Great. Well, I would like to acknowledge Nino Santiago from our police department who's here tonight, and thank you, Nino, for being here. So if anybody has any ideas about getting kind of unruly, you might turn around and change your mind. Nino, thanks. Yeah.
I have one more thing.
Give Greg the night off here. So with that,
Bill.
sorry.
Sorry, I'm space cadet today. The other thing I wanted to say is that the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition has hired a program director, which we're really excited about. So we now actually have a staff person with a little bit more bandwidth to start rolling out some of the programs that we've talked about, and taking the road show on the road, and coming to all the communities and presenting the findings from the contract that we have out for the housing study through the IHOP grant. So we are reviewing the first round of information that was gathered. The board is right now, and then that will go back for any edits that are necessary. And then once that is complete, that process is complete, then we'll start scheduling those road shows. So our new executive director is April Long. Many of you know her from Ruwapa.
Yeah. Did she start?
She officially starts in September.
That'll help. That's great. Nice. Okay, manager.
Yeah, just a couple quick updates. One that we'll end up bringing back to council, but I thought I'd just put it on your radar. This relates to public art as well, but we were just offered from a family that lives up in Emma. They are moving and have a large art piece that they have offered to gift us, and or long-term loan. There's some options there. So BPAC was going to look at that this week and make a recommendation to council. It's something that's moving pretty quickly, just because they are moving and they are unable to take it, but they really like the art piece and want to see a new life for it. So Public Works, myself, we went up yesterday to look at it, and it's a pretty neat piece actually. And so we would have to move it down here, which we think we can do without damaging it. And maybe what we would do is try to do that and store it until we make a final decision. But like I said, it's all moving pretty quickly, so we'll come back to you all with that.
Is it sculpture, painting?
Sculpture, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
said large.
It's
so I
steel,
figured.
yeah. It's a steel sculpture, and it's probably at its apex about 8 feet tall, and somewhat abstract, but just angular pieces of steel that are all rusted, so it's all one color. So I think it could be a neat one for us, but we'll see what you guys think and what feedback thinks. Oh, and I do have one more thing. Just a quick update on the Basalt, or Midland money, rather. So we have given out all but about 50 of them. So just shy of 2,500 of those certificates have gone out. They're starting to come back in to us now, but we think that there's still some in circulation out there that people have in their pockets. So we'll monitor that here for a bit. If we feel like we maybe need to disperse a few more, we could do that. We'll come back to this council at a future meeting and talk to you about that. So,
Great.
so far, so good. The businesses seem to be like.
Jane, I noticed you just came in the back. We approved the yoga in the park under the consent agenda. But we'd love to see a presentation, demonstration if you can come up.
Your best Warrior One.
Well, you guys will see that on Saturdays in the park then. We're really delighted, thank you.
Okay, cool.
Ryan, did you say anything about the murals?
Oh, no, Thank you for that. So right now, it should be active, and we actually have several of the murals posted right here behind you. And what the point of these murals are is for people to go around and ultimately rank them in order of their, to choose, favorites, I guess. And they were, I think in total, 8 different artists were chosen, but I think maybe one did not come through. So I think it's 7 total pieces. And the idea is that they're throughout the downtown area. So really trying to encourage people to go on a walkabout in the downtown area and be able to see these art pieces. And I think BPAC would ultimately choose one. And then I think maybe I may get this not entirely correct, but have that artist put a permanent mural somewhere on a building in the town and perhaps the downtown. So that sound about right, James?
Yes.
From what you know.
And how do we vote?
I
There,
don't know. Sorry.
Putting you on the spot.
I believe that there is a link on our website, on the BPAC page, I believe, to vote, but I'll confirm that.
Okay.
Let you know later in the meeting here.
And I think it has been out perhaps on social media and stuff, so we can follow up on that for you.
All right. So, next order of business, we turn to presentations, and so next item, 6A, we're going to receive a presentation from the Jadwin team. And looks like we have some P&Z guys, but not all of them, so
You
come
guys
on
can
up.
take a- Yeah, please.
Thank you, guys.
Bill Marin, so thank you, P&Z, welcome, see Bill, Mr. Kaplan, how you doing? This is quick action, right? Is this your first meeting?
I was at one last week.
Oh, good, well, glad to see you. So, James,
Yeah, thank you. This item is a presentation of the Jadwin Black Mountain Development Proposal. The intent of this item this evening is to allow for the applicants, who are Jadwin Park LLC, to present their proposal to both the council and the P&Z members, and for both boards to get an understanding of the application before it goes into the public hearing process. The application is a PUD application that's associated with an annexation. So it will require 3 rounds of review by the P&Z and Town Council. So this evening, staff recommends hearing a presentation from the applicants of the proposal, and then asking questions from the 2 boards, P&Z and Council, about the contents of the application if you have questions about what's in it. Staff then recommends not taking public comments this evening or providing discussion from the boards because this isn't a notice public hearing at this point. After this evening's presentation, the applicants will then proceed into the public hearing process with the P&Z, at which point public comments will be taken and then discussion will be had, sorry. And we do have the applicants here this evening. We've got Bridger Smith and we've got Ramsey Fulton, the architect for the project. Bridger, would you like to introduce your team and then provide your presentation?
Sure.
Thanks.
Can you
you
guys
got the
hear me
floor.
okay?
Good evening.
Hello, everyone. Well, my name is Bridger Smith, and this is Ramsey Fulton. He's our architect. And then I've got my brother Coulter Smith and Michael Forrest, who are partners in the project, and Mark Chain, and who's our planner, and Stephanie, who works with Sopris Engineering. And then I believe Heather is going to be joining us over
She was
Zoom.
on earlier, I don't know if she's still with us.
She's on, yeah.
She raised her hand.
It looks like
Yeah,
she's
she's there,
there.
She
okay.
might want to go elevator.
Okay. I'm just gonna set you guys up with, where we've been and, set the stage for when we purchased the property and what we've done to get to this point. So in 2018, we became interested in the property, and we started talking to Linda Jadwin, the owner. We put it under contract in 2018, and then we began studying the property and reviewing it, and at the same time, we started going to the design charrettes that the community was holding that were for the 7 key parcels in the town of Basalt. So you can go to the next slide. So we started looking at the site and looking at the constraints of the site, and this is a just to set the stage here. The site is the white dotted line here. To the south, we have the highway. To the north, we've got the river. We have the stop property, which is to the east between the library and our property. And then you can see downtown and the bus stop. The reason I wanted to show you guys this image first is that something that has really been driving our entire design process has been all about the location and embracing the location of this property. We've got a noisy highway, which Bill noticed on our site walk this afternoon, and we have a beautiful river on the north side. We also have a neighborhood to the west, and then we have an existing residential, a couple different residential houses to our east that are slated to be redeveloped at some point in time. We don't know when, but that all falls within the master plan. We have the opportunity to create friendly bike paths and pedestrian paths that fall in line with Basalt's Greenway plan, and we have the ability to create a property that will easily connect our future residents to the bus stop. Go to the next slide. So the first thing we really had to do is we were watching the design charrettes, and we were looking at what the community feedback was, and the general consensus was that that the community does not want sprawl. The community wants some level of density on this property. There was discussion to have up to 186 units at one point, and that turned out to be too many, which is pretty obvious. But where it fell is somewhere between 80 and 180 in the master plan when looking at both the Jadwin and the Stott property. So we're just looking at the Jadwin property, and in the master plan, it demonstrates that it wants more of the residential component. So go to the next slide. So this is sort of what we came up with when comparing it to the goals of the master plan, and that's really our guideline, is to make sure we were trying to meet the goals of the master plan, meet the goals of the community, and do something that we felt is appropriate. So on the southeast side, you have what's in yellow is the residential component. On the north side is the opportunity for the open space. And on the east side are what we're proposing to be fishing cabins, the short-term rental fishing cabins. Now, the red lines in between are what are our site constraints. So we have the town sewer that runs right through the main part of the property, and we can't build on that sewer. So that was a natural location for us to have an access roadway that enters the property. Then further to the east, well, you actually go back to the next slide.
The next one or the last one?
Go to the last one. Further to the east, we have a utility line that runs north to south through the property as well. We also have a wetlands, which is the green line, and we have a floodplain. So as you can see, there's a lot of things going on with this property. There's a lot of pros and cons. The cons are obviously working around the utilities, working around the wetlands, and working around the highway, because the highway noise is incredibly loud. So we've really focused on those pros and cons to try to come up with this plan. You can go back to the next ones.
One more?
Yeah. So this shows housing along the highway. We have 2-story housing and 3-story. We have townhomes in the center portion of the property, and then we have the fishing cabins on the east side. Everything on the north is the open space. And the goal here really is, with the noise of the highway, we knew that there was never going to be any luxury housing here. It just doesn't make any sense. So we really dove into this thinking of it as missing middle housing and workforce housing. And so what we've done is we've tried to design units that are modest, that are affordable by design, and that take into consideration that it is against the highway and there is noise, but you also have this amazing amenity of the open space to make it a really nice place for the residents to live. So I think with that being said, that's just kind of the overview. I'm going to let Ramsey dive into more of the different components.
Well, I think he pretty much covered it all. So, but I'll kind of go again, nonetheless. Now, I'd like to focus in on the proposed elements of the design, and the first slide that I wanted to put in here really touches on some of the goals first and foremost, and looking at, you know, some of the background of this project. And what I did is I took snippets, obviously, from the master plan here, and in order to sort of kind of further demonstrate how this development is kind of hitting some of those elements that came up in the final reporting after all the community engagement took place. Obviously, in here you can see they did refer to the constraints, which is a known thing, and Bridger did a great job of recapping. The mapping over here, once again, really illustrates well what uses are sort of promoted on this site, and we've used the same sort of color scheme for our background so that that's obvious to see. And this, you know, really, these use areas really became the fallback for why we selected the underlying zone districts that were as part of the town annexation, being R4 MD and then the C1 for the fishing cabin development here. Then, as Bridger was pointing out, the key parcels data from the master plan did indicate a range from 80 to 180 for the Jadwin and Stop parcel. So that was an important data piece in us determining what level of density. And then, you know, really heeding this advice here, coming from community feedback, that density over sprawl, which is a great way to sort of achieve a higher level of community housing assets. And then obviously this graph here is a demonstration of the feedback and what people thought was appropriate for these parcels. And the nice thing about looking at that data is, that there is open space was heavily desired there. We are incorporating a lot of open space. Affordable housing is desired there. We're going above that element. Single family and townhomes and multifamily, we're actually not showing any single family, but we're creating a denser development with townhomes and multifamily. And then, of course, the recreational and camping element, which we've talked about already. As a next goal of the development, I felt is important to kind of illustrate that really this is housing to reflect the diverse community of Basalt, and to ensure we are integrating all levels of the community in the town's supporting variety of residences. So, and obviously we come in a lot of different shapes and sizes in Basalt, and I think the housing mix of townhomes to affordable housing community assets to 3 bedrooms and studio apartments, and the intermixing of that is a real good snapshot of a lot of the town of Basalt's people. And this is sort of another slide to that, to illustrate some of those mixing pot of the town. Then, as Bridger did mention already, leaning into the site and what the site has to offer was an important element of this. Obviously, with the great proximity to RTD and alternative transportation sources such as that and the WeCycles, which we are proposing to have a station on the site if they so desire. And then also the beauty of the river, which a lot of people here today got to see in our walk. It's a great space to be in, and those are the assets. And so we wanted to lean into the site and use what it has to offer. And then understanding the context and the awareness of the adjacencies. Bridger did a great job of describing what is flanking the borders of the Jadwin and Stott parcel. And obviously, we're just the Jadwin, but a lot of those principles hold true, where it became important to step down the density and the building heights from east to west as you move towards more county and rural lands, and maybe have your more dense elements that are tucked next to where the master plan was supporting that and where it's next to civic buildings. Next is sort of just an overview image of our site plan proposed. This time with a little gray color coding that indicates residential versus the fishing cabins. And up in the front here, right above where it says Emma Road, is where we're gonna put our M1 and M2 buildings, which are our multifamily buildings that are desired to be the affordable housing assets on the site. They're each 2 stories tall, and they are 12 plexes, each one of them. And they have a variety of bedroom makes, and they're architecturally distinct from what is over here, which are 3-story buildings. That is the M3 and the M4, which are intended to be free market units that are apartment buildings as well, with 16 units in each one of these, and these are 3 stories tall, stepping up once again the massing as you get towards this eastern side. The other element that Bridger did point out was the townhomes. And in the townhomes, we have 12 townhomes and 2 different types of models, all being duplexes or standalone townhomes with sort of a row home sort of look and feel, sort of a middle housing option for the community. And then, of course, we don't want to miss the open space here and the gift to the town, which is on the area of the site we're calling the dog leg. So as we get into, zooming into the actual unit plans and the designs for the multifamily, we have a mix of 3-bedroom units and 1-bedroom units and studios. And, the thinking there was to filling the void of housing opportunities and moving away from the more common 2-bedroom units. And the goals of that are really to provide family size units with 3 bedrooms for actual families that want to live here, and as well as having places for singles and those who want to establish roots in a studio space that maybe want a much lower price cap on their unit, modeled for community and essential workers who need a place of their own. And that model really holds true in the M1 and M2 and the M3 and M4, and those the unit makeups are very similar and similar sized, and so the architecture wanted to adjust obviously to be at 3 stories tall, and obviously break down that mass a little bit differently to have its unique character. But we feel like the mix of family units and units for single individuals and units where maybe a new couple would be living is another sort of demonstration of the diversity within the development we're shooting for, where families can live next to single people and et cetera, and I think it just makes for a better community. Before we move away from these plans, which are really the same in the M1, M2, and M3 and M4, a couple quality goals that we have in mind here. One is obviously when you have units that are sort of have an inner hallway, and maybe you're in the middle of the development and just this one side of openness, it's important to have higher ceilings so that they feel open and quality, room for air circulation, room for light to penetrate deep into the space. And so we're trying to model these with 9-foot ceilings throughout, and also another goal is to have private outdoor spaces for all the units, interior bike storage and bulk storage for all the units, and then of course the proximity to community spaces and amenities that you saw on the site plan, as well as a connection to place and architectural identity by actually putting in quality materials and providing a quality product that people can be proud of to call their home and respect. Then there's the townhomes. These are the elements that are kind of tucked behind the M1, M2, and the M3, M4 multifamily buildings. And these are a little bit higher end than the multifamily buildings. yet maintain a density over sprawl model. And we feel like they're, like Bridger said, they're responsibly planned. They're planned with the proportions to sort of make sure that they're fitting in a row and sort of have a compact nature to them, sort of a more affordable model. And we've tucked the garages underneath to allow it to get some of that asphalt area and row parking off the street and allow for some private indoor storage areas in these. But they're not huge. They're not luxury size. They're about 1,800 to 2,000 square feet. And they are sort of, we did some architectural things to break down the mass of the building and sort of give it some architectural character to differentiate the third floor, to better address the pedestrian way and not have it look as large as 3 stories might be in other cases. So then this is the site section of the development and the view looking from Highway 82 with the building elevations in place. And over here you can see the M3, M4 multifamily, and then the community asset 2-story M1 and M2. Off in the distance and not tucked right up to the road here is kind of the fishing cabin behind a parking area. And then the potential community facility or community gift is over here. And, I think one thing that was also important to point out about this design is, we really did try to employ some green initiatives from both site design and building design. And from the site design, I think one of the ways that's accomplished is just the density of the units and the efficiency of the geometries of the units we created. Which has allowed for a slightly higher density and more open space than your typical sprawling neighborhood of suburban homes. Obviously, we also want to have a lot of EV parking, which I think is demonstrated in the site plan, electric vehicles, and we already touched on WeCycle stations and bicycle and alternative transportations. So that's kind of on the site design. On the building design, we do have the goal of having 100% electric-based heating and cooling for the whole development. There's been consideration of large rooftop solar arrays to help support all those demands for electricity on site. And then obviously the efficient envelope, which helps in the heating and cooling needs. And the use of some solar tempering at the south and west glazing and utilizing architectural features as we can to achieve that. So this slide right here then gets into the real question of quantity of community housing. And this pie chart up here kind of shows you our unit count for the development. And then the 14 represents the 20% required units for the Basalt Code. And the 10 represents what we're offering at the first pass here of additional above code, which comes to 35% of the unit count to be affordable. If you kind of look at that in this fashion here, where you have, if 14 is the whole amount, and you add another 10, it's nearly doubling the requirement, which I think is a good place for us to be. I think it's kind of as a development model, I think we've really pushed the pro forma and the financing models to kind of see how far we can take the community housing while supporting the rest of the development. This is kind of where it's landed. And so with that, I guess I'll point out over here really quick as well, that, we are planning to meet with Bach in a couple days. We did do a site walk with them, but as far as their checklist and the recent adopted updates to their community housing requirements, we've paid attention to all of that and sort of feel like we've addressed all those things, but that meeting will be in a couple days. So, and then Bridger, I'll let you talk a little bit about the cabins.
Okay, yeah, so you can see on the right side of this slide that area is the fishing cabins that we're proposing. And the idea here is that these cabins they fit in with the small town character of Basalt, and that they're authentic. and that, you know, they're spaced, so they're interesting. So we have 3 different models. They're very small in size. I think one's 350, the other one is around 600 square feet, and I think one is 700 square feet. So they're these small, short-term rental cabins, with the idea to create vitality without taking away long-term housing. So it's specifically designed for short-term rentals, but set up in a way where it's not a full-time boutique hotel. A lot of boutique hotels, you know, you gotta have 40 keys, 60, 80 keys to be called a boutique hotel. It's not like that. It's more like a small town hospitality operation, where, you know, you would have keyless entry. You would show up, and there would be an on-site manager. In the summertime, there would be the potential to, you know, show up, and if your cabin is not ready, you could go into what we have as an amenity structure. So the amenity structure has a few tables. It has a little lounge area. It could potentially have a little kitchenette that's set up for, you know, breakfast in the morning for the guests. But the idea really is that it's trying to fit into the small town character of Basalt, trying to be authentic and trying to create a unique experience for people to come to Basalt, to, you know, come here, visit maybe friends or family here, or maybe it's someone that's working for RMI, or, you know, we've actually heard that there's people that come and work for RMI, and they need a nice place to stay. This is a perfect location for them. So we're trying to create something that's a little bit different, a little bit unique, and is purposely set up to run, so it's very efficient, so we don't need a lot of staff, and it's done in a very tasteful way. So another element to this is the glamping tents. And the reason we brought in the glamping tents, you can go to the next slide, is really to continue to add that unique experience. I don't think there's any glamping tents in the Basalt area that I'm aware of. There might be one operation in Missouri Heights, but it's very difficult for anyone to have a glamping operation in this valley, mainly for zoning reasons. And you see it in a lot of other places, and people do enjoy it. So we thought it would be a fun, interesting, unique thing to add as an additional element to the cabins, just in the summertime, just for 4 months out of the year. And it would help us with our bottom line to support, you know, the staff and the manager, or, you know, the backup manager that we would have on site all the time. So something that's really important to this concept is that it fits in with the neighborhood. We've designed the cabins so the entry points on the west side are facing east, away from the west neighborhood, and the entry points on the east side are on the west, so when you're out on your deck, you're facing the pond, looking towards the river. So the idea being all of the noise that would potentially happen if someone were entering the cabin or sitting on the deck is faced away from the west neighborhood. So that's something really important, because I wanted to take into consideration that neighborhood. We would have a strict curfew, strict noise rules, on-site manager who's managing all of that, who's watching the parking, and really try to make an experience where someone can come here and you know, come with their family or their friend, go fishing on the river, or bike into downtown to Basalt and eat at the restaurants. And yeah, I think that's the gist of it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're not going to take public comment, but we'll take questions, comments from council and plan.
Actually, that was the gist of that section.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you guys.
Heather Henry is about to kind of jump on, and she's joining us via Zoom. So sorry about that, Bill.
Bill, you know I'm not going to sit here and not talk. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. I will be really quick, and then we can move on. Ramsey, I'll let you kind of run the mouse maybe as I talk about a few things. So you can see in this plan what we were handed, in some respects almost from the constraints, was this like 2/3, 1/3. So we had a lot of open space to be thinking about, contemplating. We've spent quite a bit of time out on the site, which has been really great. Yep. So we'll go to the next slide. So we've thought about the site really in these 4 different sections. So one being our multifamily residential. And some of our, key challenges in this area was obviously connectivity. So making sure that we continued some of the integrity of the pedestrian movements, both along Emma Road and then into the site itself. So we have a trail all the way along Emma, and then we have sidewalks. So we're really treating one, and then as you progress from the multifamily into the townhomes, with the landscape design, really thinking about this as a neighborhood. Sidewalks, we're looking at street trees that would be somewhat uniform and kind of give that sense of a block as you moved into this area and then you move into the townhomes. The area around 1, 2, what we're gonna look at is really pushing the envelope in terms of our tree screening, hopefully even some berming, as we work through all the details, say with CDOT, can we berm between here and Highway 82, work a little bit on the noise. So this is where our area is gonna come in to try and work on some of that mitigation. So again, number 2, as you move into the townhomes, you're also transitioning into this lower density. You then move to the fishing cabins and directly into the open space. So we still have these street trees, but they start to break apart a little bit as you kind of move into the pond area, and number 4 with open space. Number 3, with our fishing cabins, we really wanted to, again, by design, work on the separation. So as people came and they were staying at the fishing cabins, they feel like they're in a little enclave. So their trees look very different species. They're much more organic in their layout, a very sort of natural setting to tuck these cabins into out on the property. As you get into these areas of number 3 and 4, for those of you that were out on the site, you'll see, there's a lot of vegetation out there. So both of those areas, we really want to look at like selectively removing vegetation just to create these pockets and then only adding back in where it makes sense. The other way we're looking at creating its own little enclave with number 3 is just some of the other technical components that we need to do. So we have a fire lane between number 2 and 3 that we're going to turn into a little bit of a courtyard space. So it's going to feel like a pedestrian space, but be signed and marked so that the fire department is clear that that's their space. Our technical review asked for a few things like don't use bollards, make sure we have it signed. So that's all going to be great. And then again, Ramsey can point to the amenity space for the fishing cabins, the amenity building, and then there's an outdoor space all around that. So again, that provides a nice transition between more residential and moving into the fishing cabin area. So we'll move on. Number 4 is obviously where we get to have a lot of fun with a lot of open space. As Bridger mentioned, we can go to the next slide and we'll zoom in a little bit. So as Bridger mentioned, this is all part of the Greenway plan that, has been more than 20 years in the making to really think about what the edge of the river looks like, how people are going to access it, and remembering that we are just the Jadwin parcel and not the Stott parcel. We wanted to make sure there was access to this area and then ultimately could have the connectivity when something different besides private ownership right now happens with the Stott parcel. Right now, we will have a fence all along our property line to the east to make sure that the Stott parcel is separated and no one feels empowered to wander onto that property. But you can see from the trail system that we kind of have a loop within this space, this open space, and ultimately that loop can also connect to the east. And right now it connects down to the river. Our overall theme, hopefully you can see from these images, we had some feedback around, what's happening in this floodplain area, what are the intentions. I think we have a demonstrated, and Basalt has this demonstrated view of what to do in these areas and how to continue to have this very light touch on the land where the public can engage in these spaces, but in a way that honors where they are as riverfront and honors the ecosystem they exist within. So further up closer to the townhomes, we have a little bit more activity. So this would be an amenity space for the residential primarily. So picnic tables, perhaps a little outdoor cook area, something that's locked off, but a lot of the units will go ahead and have access to. We love to play around with some open, flexible, like game space where people might be able to do bocce, or throw horseshoes, that
Hey,
kind of thing.
Heather, would you
So-
kind of stay closer to your mic? You're kind of cutting in and out a little bit, so.
Yeah,
Okay, there we
absolutely.
go.
I'll speak up a little bit also. So that's the area that Ramsey just circled. And then our areas as we circulate, and even the public can circulate down closer to the river, we're just thinking about, again, these really light touches. So there might be some swings. We've seen some really beautiful hammock and net spaces, and we have a lot of tree cover to work with down there. So that's our hope. In the landscape and the planting, again, we see a lot of selective removal. We have weed mitigation to do out here. And then our additions to the property will focus on restoration of some of the wetlands, again, the health of the vegetation in those areas, some habitat improvements, and things like that. We can go to the next slide. So that's our approach in our 4 areas for the landscape. And then I'm gonna talk briefly about what Ramsey described as the dogleg. So if you look in the upper right, that is directly from the master plan. And again, the key parcel identified in the 2020 master plan was the Jadwin Stott parcel. So the left-hand side is our project, the Jadwin, and the right-hand side being the Stott parcel. In the Jadwin parcel, you can also see that the dogleg was not really included, in the master plan other than kind of identified as open space. And there was a very small area identified as community facility. So a couple of issues with that particular parcel, at least as contemplated in the master plan. You saw from our constraints, we have our sewer line that runs through, we have our overhead electric, et cetera. So we have a lot of things going on the site. And so that small little community facility, as we were thinking about the master plan, there were a number of properties where we were desperately seeking daycare is what I would say. And so we were really identifying what projects and where those could go. We've obviously been seeing that smaller pieces of property like that are becoming very challenging for the town to, pursue in a more flexible and resilient way for what can happen there. So because of access and privacy and some of the other physical constraints, we said, what if we look at this much larger parcel that has great access off of Emma? It's significantly larger. It can be quite a bit more resilient, fitting both parking and a pretty good size building on it, and have that kind of balance, if that made sense in the future. Maybe it's housing, who knows? But so right now we've probably quadrupled the gift to the town with this dogleg parcel. And so that's what we'd like to, put in front of the town, and we look forward to further discussion on that. And so that would be, instead of the smaller piece you see in the master plan, it's the larger piece that encompasses all of the dogleg, everything to the east of the access road that accesses the parcels behind. Okay, with that, that's, I think, all we have. That is actually the end of our presentation.
Or maybe not.
or maybe not.
But we really, there's
Ramsey,
no,
take it home.
yeah, thank you. There's really not much more to go over, and I'll just keep it brief. But I did want to sort of, point out that, we were aware of the 8 themes of the master plan, and we did sort of consider all of these themes in our application. And in our application packet, I would just say you can sort of refer to that, and we color coded it to match these theme colors, and we'd like you to sort of, refer to that to see some of the things we've done to address the themes that were of the master plan. And then, once again, want to reiterate that, that we did our best to identify all the elements out of the key parcel section of the master plan for the Jadwin Stott and incorporate those to the extent they made sense for this application. And so I really would encourage everyone to look at page 80 through 86, because that has become quite the section we're very in tune to as we have made our plans here. And so now, for the third time, we'll just kind of leave it with a general site plan on the screen for everyone to understand where we're at. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Bill. And
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Very good, thanks. So James, we're not going to take public comment tonight, but we'll take comments and discussion from council and P&Z.
Well, actually, staff would suggest keeping it to questions about the content of the application so
Okay.
that P&Z and council really understand the proposal, but then kind of leave comments and discussion for the actual notice public hearings that will
So
take place.
we'll reserve substantive comments or questions about the design for future meetings. This is just to make sure we have a understanding of what has been presented.
Yes.
Okay, so P&Z, you guys want to offer questions, comments? Bill?
Yeah, I have a little bit of question about
Bill,
the master.
do you mind just coming up?
Sorry about that. I have a question regarding the master plan, because we've been talking about that. And one of the big parts of our last master plan, as was the two before it, were getting as much residential density within the urban growth boundary as we could. And for the last two major projects, everyone presenting has chosen to be at the much lower end of the density spectrum. And I'm kind of curious as to why, because we were trying to get somewhere, and everywhere we got was at the absolute lowest end. And I'm curious as to why you made those choices.
For a few different reasons. Well, we really dove in and tried to do what felt was appropriate on the site, and tried to make sure the scale fit the neighborhood. We of course, more density would be great, but it really just didn't feel like we could get any more on the site, and the parking was a big component of that. So we do meet the parking in the code. If we were to fit more units on the site, we would not meet that. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes these things are driven by parking, but also the fact that we wanted to have a variety of product types on the site and not just make it all this similar sort of 16 plexes and 12 plexes. We actually wanted to have a variety of sort of end users there, so it feels more of a culture in a neighborhood than just a blocked out project with all the same product. To have a unique character, I would say, would be another response. Then obviously there's a lot of area of the site that can't be built on, and we're aware of that, and we think that's a huge asset. But we have taken the areas that really are opportunistic for development and studied them closely, and have created the density that we felt was appropriate.
Yeah, all right, thanks. The rest I have to say is all comments, so we'll wait till later.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else from P&Z? Eric, come on up.
Has there been discussions with RAFTA in regards to where Emma Road and the on-ramp kind of meet and making sure traffic's smooth and connected and we have good access to all that mass transit that you brought up?
So we're working on that. We've done a traffic study, and we're working at how to improve that particular intersection, and that's something that I think we'll get into more as we dive into this process with our civil team.
Excellent.
But we're working on it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Good question. Come on up, Mike.
Is there any public access proposed to the river? That there's a great public space behind the library that includes trails, kind of dead ends, I think, at the Stout property or parcel. So are you proposing any fisherman access or any sort of public access throughout this project?
Yeah, we are. So in this slide here, you can see, I don't know if you can see there's 6 parking spaces that abut right up to the open space.
Okay.
Those are set up to be guest public parking, with the idea that anyone could walk through the property to gain access to the river. And you could walk along these trails, and we'll have really creative wayfinding ways so that it's clear where you can go.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, do you have any more on that?
Well, I will say our technical review,
Louder.
Speak up.
our technical review that we had last week brought up some interesting questions about that public access. It's been something that's very important to us and to the design plan, and again, to what we think the integrity of the Greenway plan ultimately wants to be. But, their concern is public interaction on a somewhat private site. And so I think that's going to be an interesting dialogue as we move forward. And we'll look for a lot more feedback from you all, P&Z and council, on, hopefully support for making that work.
Okay. Council, anybody comments? Questions of clarification, I guess these would be, so.
I got a handful. Is that the corner of the property that we always envisioned the bridge across to create our loop in Basalt?
Yes.
Is the bridge included in this proposal?
No.
It is not. Stephanie, do you want to touch on that?
We did an analysis for the town several years ago on that bridge alignment, and it's really, the span of the bridge is way too big to be realistically constructed at that location. So it's not physically feasible at that location.
Feasible, just costs a lot.
Time and money.
It also references in the master plan that if you go above 80 units, you need to build the bridge. It just so happens we're right at 80, or actually, well, we're at 68, but,
Who would have thought?
and then if you include the cabins, we're at 80. And that just, we didn't make a huge effort to get there. That just by design, that just happened by us working on it and figuring out what just felt right and what made sense with the parking, the access, and all the constraints on the site.
For the public.
I think I'd also say this is a no regrets plan. I mean, so we have this public access that goes down our own little dogleg to the river. So ultimately, if the town finds a way, then it lands right where our public trails connect to the river.
I think for public benefit, it's good to reference the actual total of buildings you're planning on putting in. So not 68, not 70, but it's technically 87 when you count your 7 landing pads. Just keep the numbers accurate so everybody within the public can actually get a real perception of what you're proposing.
Yeah, how many total cabins is it?
12,
12 cabins. And then how many glamping pads?
7.
7.
7.
So 68, 12, 87. Did I do the math right?
And then my only other question was more for staff. This then goes to P&Z for 2 readings.
Yeah, they'll go into their regular sketch plan public hearing process, so they'll have publicly noticed public hearings at P&Z. The Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, BAC, will also review it and make a recommendation, so those boards will review it and come back to council with recommendations on the sketch plan.
And then my last question for probably you, James, is on that public dedicated open space on the dogleg, what's the true building square footage on that?
Well, the applicants haven't proposed a building square footage.
But for us as a town, like if we were like given, if it was given to us, I would love to see the specs of what you could even fit on that
staff can do some work on that. We haven't at this point,
Yeah,
so.
just not a deep dive, but just something that's just building size. I feel like a problem that we've run into as a town is we see something, we get it, and then we try to fill the constraints, and it wasn't fully thought out at the start.
There's like a 14 by 70 mobile home on there.
Correct, which is fine. You could do something on it, but.
It's it is the first property you really see when you're driving from the west to east to Basalt. So it's a good opportunity to.
Don't drive down this one with me. This property is, this is the only reason I sit on council, is this property. So, what you guys are doing is awesome. I love the fishing cabin side. This is literally the only reason I sit on council, so it's very interesting to see it come back.
Question about.
100%. In all honesty, I sat on P&Z and.
We thought you sat on council because of the rest of the.
I was here before all of you.
It's true.
I'm really shocked. And I can't.
It's a troubled time, though. Troubled time that I'm still here.
I can easily imagine that subsurface parking on the multifamily pieces is probably cost prohibitive, but were there also groundwater constraints in
Very
trying to
much
go
so.
below grade?
Yeah.
What is the depth of groundwater? A couple feet?
I
or-
don't think we've done any borings, correct?
We did some soil studies. It's right there.
Okay.
It's 36
Listen, you
inches.
scuff your heel, you create a little artesian spring?
Certain spots. But yeah, it's about 30 to 36 inches,
Okay.
certain spots.
Questions for clarification, we're not gonna get into design details tonight, but
I'll ask it easy. When you plan a fair amount of bike racks for the public access so people aren't, chaining bikes up all over the place?
Yep.
Yeah.
They're shown on the plan, and we'd be happy to
Zoom in.
point them out a little bit better. Yeah, well, this is working. I didn't know it would work
Yeah.
to do that.
And it's high res enough, you can see.
We have
here, these little black dots are sort of bike rack areas that we have scattered about. And then, yeah, go ahead.
And we have some, we're working on bike storage inside the buildings as well.
Mhm.
Like really nice bike storage where you could, pull your e-bike in and plug it in,
Yeah.
I
I think that'll be a nice feature for something close.
And same with the cabins too. The cabins have these little outside storage areas where you could, put your fishing pole in there or your skis or your bike and if you're there for a week or whatever, it's small enough where you don't want to stay longer than, a week, but it's a really nice cozy,
this may be crossing the line in terms of design ideas, but I would encourage us all to look creatively at that trail easement and the setback from Emma Road in terms of planting. I know it's, a little bit incongruous to have a trail and dense planting, but I think the site could really benefit from some serious vertical planting to help visually mitigate buildings along Emma Road as well as create a sound buffer, because we all heard it out there tonight. It was hard. It's a serious issue that, we encourage you. So I wouldn't limit, the planting scheme to just the private property. I mean, I would look creatively at that trail easement as well, because it looks like to me there's room for plantings in there. So maybe it's a public-private enterprise or something, I'm not sure, but I think it'd be a mistake to miss that opportunity. Anyone else?
Yeah, has the town arborist been out, and has he been included, in the design as far as, Heather was talking about possibly like removing some species and just kind of getting his eyes on it to make sure that things we shouldn't be removing are not removed, and that the design still works for you guys?
We haven't done that yet, but we always do that, and he'll help, like you're saying, both with some of the removal and health strategies as well as our species selection when we're looking at adding trees. He has a ton of input with us, so we haven't done it yet, but it's definitely part of our process as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, staff has had Rick LaFaro, the Roaring Fork Conservancy, out there to review the site as well and do a site visit. And he's working on comments as well, so
Okay, great.
that'll be helpful.
Okay, so this will come back. Hang on, go ahead, sorry, Brian.
Did we get to see the traffic study at the first presentation?
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet, I missed it, sorry.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks very much.
Thank you very much, you
And
guys.
we'll see you after you have your visitations with the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next item up is we have another presentation. It's a owner's rep project update on our Midland Streetscape project. Dave Detweiler and Catherine Christopher. Good evening, Catherine.
Good evening, Mayor.
Dave, thank you. Come on up.
Evening. We'll go fast.
So were you running the traco out there a little bit ago?
I'll do it if you'll do it. We'll go spend a day and
I don't think anybody wants me behind those controls.
just get the cars out of the way and off we go.
I have
We're
a
only 3
4-year-old
minutes
who
behind
wants to do
schedule,
it.
so you're good.
You want
Right,
to start or me?
Away, yeah.
Okay. So again, the report we give you in your packet is always a little outdated on pictures. You hear me say it every week. So the good thing is you can see the progress out here. So on the spur, we've got a little bit of concrete left. You can see just up on the end here in front of Town Hall. And then we're locked in for paving next week. That got pushed back a week due to some grading issues right up here where you can see the sidewalk tying in to the existing sidewalk. That it took us a little time to figure that out and make it work. So we'll be paving next week, and then weather permitting, we still have to stripe, and then it'll get turned over. So have to see how weather goes, the way it's been going. Obviously, we're working up the hill with the water line. That's going great. I hope you had a chance to notice that our contractor at 5-ish every night is compiling their equipment into a very small area, trying to keep the rest of the parking open and available. So if you look at what they have now, I think it's working really well. So kudos to them for that. We continue to meet on the rest of the design work in phase 2. We had a big meeting yesterday about cost reduction strategies and how that's coming together. Team is doing great, but we're not quite there yet to report back to you. But probably by next month we will be. Otherwise, we're on track. No new changes, no new surprises, no new cost issues. So, quick update.
So has the pipe been laid all the way to like Alpine Bank?
It's past Alpine Bank, actually almost past Tempranillo right now.
Oh, good, okay,
Yeah, just getting
It's
in
moving
front of
pretty fast.
Tempranillo.
Yeah.
nice.
And the overnight work went well.
Yeah.
Last week, there, as you may have experienced, there was 2 nights of overnight work, and we appreciate everyone being flexible on those nights. I know that's not easy, but we really saw a large reduction in the time that work took by having, that street completely closed and that street available for them to just work hard to get that pipe in the ground.
Are we removing the old pipe or just leaving it?
No, we're leaving it there. We need it to remain in
Yeah, of course,
service so
yeah.
that
So we
everyone has
switch
service
over.
while,
Yeah.
we lay the new pipe.
Yeah,
So it'll remain there.
yeah.
And the existing water line is on the other side
It's
of
on
the
the
street.
north side of the street, that's right.
Did they encounter anything interesting while excavating this?
No, nothing to report.
No railroad tracks yet?
They expected a gas line, which they never found, which was curious, but other than that, no, nothing.
Yeah, if you remember, we had that patch of coal, the really black soil that was through here. We haven't hit that yet. It's actually been much better material, which may result in us being able to use it for fill around the piping and not have to import as much material. So we're checking on that right now, and that could result in some savings, both in time and dollars. so that was good.
So what's the outlook for completing the water line all the way up to Homestead?
I don't have that schedule in front of me, but we expect the main to continue through September, and then they'll be coming back and doing all the services, which are largely on the north side of the street, with a few larger connections that, you know, loop in the BCC loop that comes around to the south, and a few other larger connections. So in general, once the service connections are done, that should be roughly Thanksgiving-ish. But we, if you could, I'll come to you with a final date once we have that. Don't hold me to that Thanksgiving.
But the idea is to get that done before the winter.
Yeah.
And then pause through the winter.
Do you mind sharing the page? It won't load for me. Like, it's my iPad. Just like the page with all the numbers and everything that's in the packet.
Sure, so what we're showing currently,
I don't see it.
James, if you can pull it up.
Yeah, sure. Just a second.
What we're showing on the budget page right now, because of the conversations we've had about phase two, we all know that it came in at a number higher than we had anticipated. So we're working to reduce that. So rather than confusing the message with those numbers that it's somewhat in flux right now, we're just reporting here, this is really phase one. So if you go to page, the last page really.
138.
James.
Yep, trying to get there.
Yeah. There you go. So really, the budget side, which is in our system to the left of this, still shows the original budget, which was the 12.8 million. Right now, what we're reporting on is just what we've obligated for phase one. And once we get the phase two component dialed in to match up with our available funding, we're gonna flip back to, here's what the overall budget is.
James, could you increase the size of that just a little bit?
Thanks.
You can see mine too. It helps.
It's closer.
So all of this, if you remember way back to probably the first presentation, all of this budget information lives online and it's available to the staff and all to, it's real-time invoices, contracts that have been written. So again, we haven't updated the budget yet until we get through that value engineering effort on phase two. So it's a little confusing compared, looking back to the budgets we gave you 4 or 5 months ago.
Do you have a timeline for that budget engineering process?
Yeah, we hope to be in front of you in November with the contract for the next phase. That's a goal. Or the first meeting in November.
And I think some congratulations are in order for Catherine.
Oh.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell them why, Catherine?
Oh. Racking my brain.
Like, what did I do?
Not pregnant. I got a grant or we were successful in a grant application for another $250,000 for the project. So that was very exciting.
And to double down on that, I'm using this as the example for other communities that I'm doing work in, as the model for if you just keep working at it and looking for grant opportunities and doing the effort to submit, this project is getting way more grant from different places, different, obscure is not the right word, but a variety of places. It's because you're putting in the time and the effort to make it happen, so it is a.
I think our total outside funding is hovering around 2.5 million now.
Yeah. It's impressive.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Any more questions? Catherine or David?
This is great.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When does striping happen again? Sorry.
Weather dependent, it should be either at the end of next week or we're shooting for the end of next week, yeah. But paving definitely will occur next.
We noticed cars are starting to
Yeah.
Yeah. Work their way in.
They're
yeah.
getting in there somehow. Okay. We're up to council actions, and first order of business is interview and appointment for a planning zoning commission member tonight. Come on up. Hi. Hi. Bob? So who's handling this? James, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. This item is an interview and consideration of appointing Bob Kaplan as an alternate to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Bob is a 2-year Basalt resident and is a real estate broker with 23 years of experience. So this evening, staff recommends hearing an intro from Bob, and then council can ask questions, and ultimately, if council believes it appropriate, you could appoint Bob to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a 3-year term.
Great,
Bob,
thank
would you
you.
like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Bob, welcome, and
you.
thanks for your interest, enthusiasm. We appreciate your support for our community, and thanks for volunteering.
Thank you.
You got the floor. Tell us all about yourself and why you
James,
want to do this.
Sort of stole my air a little bit. Yeah, I'm, my wife Eileen and I moved here a little over 2 years ago. I've been connected with the Valley for probably 40 years. I lived here in the 80s and I have family and friends here, and so have stayed connected to the Valley and happy to be here permanently now. Yes, I have been a commercial real estate broker for 20 plus years, not a residential commercial. During that time, I've primarily sold apartment buildings, and in recent years, I started a company that specializes in outdoor hospitality. So what we saw tonight is the type of stuff I've been involved in, multifamily and hospitality. And I hope that I can bring some of that knowledge to the Planning and Zoning Committee and help keep Basalt a wonderful place to live.
Wonderful. Have you seen the P&Z in action?
I visited a meeting last Wednesday, yes.
Great, and you're still here. That's a good thing. That's okay.
Yes.
That's good. Any questions for Mr. Kaplan? Or
Thanks for volunteering.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope
Don't we always ask them if they ski?
what's that?
Don't we always ask if they ski?
We should change that to ride bikes.
Because it's summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, all good?
Well, we're going to take action here, so I'd entertain a motion if we're good with that.
Mayor, I move that the town council appoint Bob Kaplan to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a 3-year term to end August 22nd, 2026.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Bob, you're there, man. Thank you so much. So
Thank you, sir.
look forward to seeing you and appreciate your interest.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
So next item, public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 18, series of 2023. Ordinance of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, authorizing the town manager to approve a lease with MSP 1 LLC for the Stotts Mill daycare space, lot 37, Stotts Mill PUD, Basalt, Colorado. James?
Thank you. As the mayor indicated, this is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance that would approve of a lease for the town to lease the Stotts Mill Core and Shell daycare space from MSP1 LLC, who is the developer of Stotts Mill. As was discussed at the last meeting, there was a requirement in the Stotts Mill approvals that the developer construct a corn shell daycare space on lot 37 of the Stotts Mill development. Town staff put out an RFP, request for proposals, for a daycare provider to finish the space and operate a daycare in the space. And Blue Lake Preschool submitted a proposal to operate a pre-K daycare in the space. And as noted at the last meeting, town staff and Blue Lake Preschool staff have been working with Picken County's staff on funding potential to finish out the space as well as to operate the daycare. Staff, as we indicated at the last meeting, believes it is helpful to give the flexibility and assurances that Blue Lake needs to secure funding if the town leases the space and then subleases it to Blue Lake. The draft lease, as we went over at the last meeting, provides for 5 years with an automatic extension up to 10 years at the town's discretion. And it is at 80% of the lease rent of other daycares in the Mid-Valley, which to begin with is about $2,400 per month. And as we noted, we believe it gives the flexibility for Blue Lake to be able to secure funding for finishing out the space. The lease hasn't changed since council approved it at first reading. And so this evening, staff would recommend taking public comments because it is a public hearing, providing council discussion. And if you're comfortable, you could approve the lease on second reading.
Thanks, James. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here present that would like to address council? Anyone virtually calling in? Looks like not. Questions, comments, or a motion?
I have a question. Does the town intend to hold the lease indefinitely?
You know, I think James might speak to this a little more, but the idea would be for us to take that responsibility on now, just have control over the site and make sure that the arrangement with Blue Lake gets off on a good footing. Obviously, it's not ready to occupy just yet. There's the improvement within the space that needs to happen, and so down the road, it might make sense to transfer that over to Blue Lake or another operator. But at least for now, there was this level of comfort with the developer, and then also Blue Lake. And then I did mention at the last meeting, we have had this kind of arrangement before, where Growing Years was a lessee to the town, and we were the lessee to the school district with that red brick building. So that seemed to work out, pretty well, and so I think there's flexibility in the future, but for now, that was the idea.
Okay. And then if the daycare, doesn't get its footing, or for whatever reason it doesn't work out, does it go back to the developer to repurpose the space, or what happens to the space?
Then council would have the option to put out another request for proposals and seek another, occupant that would either be a daycare or some community benefiting use or nonprofit in there.
I'll add to that if the town elected to not put the space to a public use, or including a daycare space, at that point, the developer would have the ability to develop, I think, 4 affordable housing units, or two affordable housing units in the space. Yeah.
Yeah, Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah, Michelle, do you have a comment?
Good evening. I wanted to also share with you that by the town holding this lease, we are able to qualify for one of the very few grants available for daycare construction right now. It's an employer-based daycare grant, and we are in the process of working through applying for that grant for up to $800,000. I made a presentation today to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners, asking for their support and to pledge money as well to help meet the matching requirement for that employer-based grant. And they approved that match for $250,000. So we will learn in October if we're if we've qualified for this employer-based grant to help Blue Lake finish out the space. And so I just wanted to share that's kind of an exciting next step that we're going towards with the space and with the lease arrangement being in this manner from the developer to the town.
And that lease, just so that you're all aware, not the lease, but the grant application, as Michelle said, goes in this week. So I'll need to sign that application, and then we'll hear back in October. So.
Great.
So I believe last time we talked about, maybe fall 2024 is when Blue Lake wants to open, if everything goes to plan, and there's grants, and there's all these activities going on. And since we have skin in the game, I wanted to see if we could make sure we get at least a quarterly update, if we, pass this. So we are kind of kept apprised of the grants. Hopefully more developments happen, kind of leading us up to that, just so we stay apprised of it.
Absolutely. I think there will be some, maybe even more frequent milestones that we'll be able to keep you apprised of, but surely on a quarterly basis. Thanks.
Cool.
I would just wonder that if we're doing it as a town grant, would that reserve any spots for town employees as a benefit?
Yes. So, Michelle, do you want to address that? It would be both town and county employees, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so there would be, and that's the exact number is detail that we're working out. But we would have a certain number of priority spots for town of Basalt employees and a certain number of priority spots for Picken County employees as well.
And then if there were, the commissioners asked today kind of how that works. What if they don't have anybody that needs it? Then you could go to sort of a second set of eligible people, whether that's
to like public, like town, like firefighters, police.
Yes, yeah, it could be whatever kind of policy you all develop, and we'll that's a detail we'll have to bring back to you all as well as the commissioners.
Okay. Further comments, questions? I'm wide open for a motion here. if
Mayor,
we're
I
ready to
move
go.
the town council adopt ordinance number 18, series of 2023 on second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Peter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. So the next item, 7C, is first reading of ordinance 19, or series of 2023 ordinance of the Town Council of Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the Public Works Manual to reinsert structural soils requirements. So James, do you want to?
Sure.
Structural soils.
Bless you.
Yeah, super interesting.
All right. Well, thank you. As the mayor indicated, this item is a first reading of an ordinance that would approve of an amendment to the town's Public Works Manual to add requirements for structural soils back into the Public Works Manual. As a bit of background, Public Works Manual is a technical document that sets standards and specifications for public improvements like roads, right-of-way, landscaping, engineering. And in 2022, the town did a complete overhaul of the Public Works Manual, and we recently identified that language and specifications for structural soils was left out of that overhaul. And so structural soils are a soil mix that is formulated to allow tree roots to grow under hardscape areas like concrete with minimizing the upheaval and helping areas where trees are planted in direct adjacency to hardscape. And so structural soils have been used in Willits Town Center throughout their development, and they've helped trees kind of thrive in an area of small soil volume without uplifting and creating upheaval of sidewalk in the area. And so they've been very positive for the town to utilize over time. And so the town staff as well as the town arborist have recommended reincorporating the specifications and requirements for structural soils into the manual as you have in your draft ordinance. The Planning and Zoning Commission also reviewed it and recommended approval. So this evening, staff would recommend asking any questions you have of staff and then providing council discussion. You could approve the ordinance on first reading if you're comfortable with it and set a public hearing and second reading date for September 12th.
Okay. Boyd, you have anything to offer on this, or James cover it pretty good?
You did a pretty good job, but it's almost a necessity if we don't wanna have to come back a few years later and start placing
Okay.
panels and stuff.
All right.
So that buys us some time and saves us money.
So, comments, questions?
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 19, series of 2023 on first reading and set public hearing and second reading for September 12th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, this doesn't require a public hearing tonight, so we can call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Peter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we turn to resolution number 30, series of 2023, resolution of the town council, town of Basalt, Colorado, authorizing the town manager to approve a contract for the Midland Streetscape Project Phase 1 landscaping with Rocky Mountain Custom Landscapes. Catherine.
Yes, so tonight I'm bringing forward to you a contract with Rocky Mountain Custom Landscapes. You may be familiar with the name as they just completed the River Park. They were the primary contractor for the park, second phase of construction. When we went out to bid, and since we've been working with Stutzman, the Rocky Mountain Custom Landscape has been their sub, or who's been providing pricing for them for the landscape elements. For example, Stutzman's installed all of the sleeving for irrigation, but Rocky Mountain Custom Landscapes would come in and install all the actual irrigation working, and then of course the planning itself. Knowing that phase 2 is going through a bit of a VE effort kind of across the board, we didn't want to finish out phase 1 and not have, you know, any landscaping. So we took phase 2 landscaping to an initial about 30% reduction, mainly just in plant densities, and came up with a scope that was appropriate, knowing that, you know, we'll be doing something similar in phase 2. So anyway, what we have, and also in order to provide the project with some cost savings, we determined that it would be more efficient for us to contract directly with this landscaping firm rather than having them be a sub to Stutzman, and by doing so, you know, we're saving ourselves the markup that Stutzman has with any sub as a standard in the industry. So since we're very confident in Steve Bergstrom, who's the Western Regional Manager, and his team's capabilities, we feel very confident that it makes sense for us to contract with them directly for the Midland Phase 1 landscaping elements, which, as I mentioned, is the irrigation piece and then the plantings. So tonight's contract for that scope of work, which is being brought to you, is for I don't have the number right here in front of me, sorry. It's for just under $100,000, or here it is, sorry, $99,885.55 for the Phase 1 landscaping, and they will largely roll in right behind Stutzman's work in Phase 1 and get going on that. They've actually, you know, anyway, they've already started some elements because Stutzman's contracted with them directly for a few, so they'll be able to do that work once we reopen the spur, being that their work is, you know, outside of the travel way. They'll be working on the other side of the sidewalks largely, so you'll see them out here this fall if you all decide to approve this contract tonight.
Questions? Is the, so these, like the deciduous trees, these are planter islands, basically. Is the irrigation in someone else's scope? Where's the irrigation picked up? Is that?
The sleeving was in Stutzman's scope, and
thank
the irrigation itself is.
Councilor Slack just
Pointed
pointed it out for me, thanks. Okay, yes, by others, but that's included in the overall.
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah.
Or by Azure, which is either the subcontractor or their like layout system.
You know them?
No.
I do.
Okay.
Is that a company is Azure?
Yeah. Yes, I know. All right, other questions?
Anyone? Mayor, I move that the town council approve resolution number 30, series of 2023.
Second.
Second, anyone?
I did.
Oh, okay, great, thanks, Angela. So moved and seconded. Can we do this?
Yep. You can do a
Voice vote? Okay. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
One abstention.
Oh, thank you for that abstention. And with that, I will call the meeting adjourned.
Recording
Kind of
stopped.
definitive, doesn't it?
So Brad